Everyone wants to know what's the best controller settings, but what about the best controller for Apex Legends? Today, we're talking about something that can seriously change the way that you play the game, and this is my honest review of a controller that was sent to me by awesome folks at Get a Grip Gaming. While I have a discount code for you guys to save some money on one, I wasn't actually downright paid for anything, so they just told me to be real. And this controller has 8 remappable buttons, which sounds over the top, right? But here's the thing, the specific way they went about it, I think it actually makes sense. So let's talk about this controller. What's different? What sets it apart? Basically, it aims to bridge the gap for people who love pro controllers already, but always feel like there's something missing. It's built to last, and I truly mean that. If you're like me and you're like sick and tired of dropping $900 on controllers over the last 2 years just for these things to not even last a year because of some issues like stick drift, then listen. With Get a Grip Gaming's controller, you're looking at similar prices to these other controllers like Scuff and Battle Beaver, but it has some key features that make it last longer. Let's start off with the first that everyone wants the most out of any controller, and that is the Hall effect analog sticks. And if you don't know what the big rave about this is, basically you're saying goodbye to stick drift. You can see side-by-side video comparison of me currently with my PlayStation 5 Edge controller compared to the Get a Grip Gaming controller. This is on no dead zone, not small, and even with no dead zone, I mean, look at how still this thing is. So unlike traditional controllers like PlayStation 5 Edge or a traditional Xbox controller or an Elite controller, at the heart of these joysticks that have Hall effect is a magnet. When you move the stick, a sensor reads the changes in the magnetic field instead of relying on physical wear and tear. This means no more wear and tear on these sticks, and more importantly, no more random screen panning because of the stick drift. Honestly, this feature alone was enough for me to ditch the Scuff, my GameNetics controller, the PS5 Edge controller, and you may be asking yourself, the PS5 Edge controller has replaceable sticks though. What about that? Well, sure. Good luck finding one though, because the only ones I could find were actually on eBay for triple the price. It's a nice feature to sell people on, but it's like you can't actually even find those replacement sticks on Amazon or at Walmart. So Get a Grip's controller pretty much eliminates that. Now, let's talk about these 8 buttons. I know you're probably asking yourself, are 8 buttons too much? I could never, right? Like my fingers are going to be accidentally pressing all of them. Well, I thought the same thing, and it definitely felt weird at first, but I found that the way that they designed these buttons on the controller are the reasons why it never really was a problem for me. You see, while there's 8 buttons, 2 of those buttons were placed in a location I have never thought a professional controller to do, next to the bumpers and the triggers. So this means it's only 6 buttons on the back really, and they're much tinier than paddles, so it's not necessarily as accidentally pressing them as usual. These buttons next to triggers and bumpers were like game changing to me. I don't know why people haven't been doing them, but they were way easier to use than I thought they were going to, and it allows you to continuously have your thumb on the analog stick so that you can sprint and not have to come to a full stop to use your shields or your med kits. Here's the truth. For other games out there, I do use less paddles. Like Rocket League, I never use any, and for Call of Duty, I use 2. But for Apex, total different beast. This game demands more from you than any other FPS shooter that I know, like popping hills, using your utility, trying to do all of that while not taking your thumbs off the sticks. It's like impossible. So you lose all your momentum just to put your thumb on the D-pad and start cycling through whatever it is you're wanting to do. It's just not super practical, at least when you're competing up against mouse and keyboard players who have a much more efficient style. The trade-off, of course, is aim assist, but that's not what this video is about. So when they sent me this controller, it was already designed for Apex, so you had your healing abilities next to your triggers and bumpers, and it was very practical. And just like any controller, after about a week of using it and you get used to the differences, it becomes super efficient. So yeah, at first I was worried about 8 buttons being way too much, but then I also remembered my PlayStation 5 Edge controller. You guys probably remember on stream when I was constantly jumping on accident, and this is because second nature was holding an Xbox controller, and I had to get used to the PS5 controller, and the paddles were in much different spots than I was used to. Same thing with this. I'm not even used to buttons, but once I gave it a week or 2, I got used to buttons, and I also got used to the placement of these buttons. It's also really nice to have for those utility action legends like Crypto when you're recalling his drone or popping the evac tower and not having to stop running. If there was one word to describe the controller, it would be efficient. You've also got to mention polling rate and performance. While the Xbox has always been my go-to choice, I did make the switch about 1.5 years ago to PlayStation controllers because the polling rate is much better, the performance and response times are much better, and Get a Grip has no no different. They went with the PlayStation controller because it just simply at its core is the better controller. I love the design of Xbox controllers. I just don't know why they've always been so far behind. Now, they also have the options for tactile buttons and triggers and bumpers. This basically is like mouse clicks. And so obviously we've known this to be in the scene for many professional controllers. Theirs are a little bit different. I would say I really love the tactile buttons on the controller. They just feel so much better than the stock traditional buttons. I've heard good things about their tactile bumpers and triggers. I personally didn't go with them because I do play Rocket League, and the triggers are basically dynamic, like Grand Theft Auto, right? If you pull the trigger all the way down, you go full speed. If you go halfway, you go half speed, whatever. I didn't really want it coming down to a specific button, but I know people do that for first-person shooters like Apex and Call of Duty. So if you want it, go for it. I don't know what it is. I love actually pushing the trigger down. Now, despite all the features that it has to make your gameplay better, one thing that I really enjoyed was the aesthetics behind this controller, and that's because there's so many customizable options. I'm someone that likes to hang my controllers up. I want everyone to see them, and I like the design of them. I go for themed ones. So for this one, I went full Georgia Bulldogs, matte black, matte red, and it turned out very nicely because the website has so many customizable options. I mean, you can go even full wooded controller. I mean, this wood controller looks sick, but every little individual piece has its own color scheme that you can go for, or own finished look that you can go for. And even if you don't want all the good colors that, you know, charge more, you could just simply get all the nice effects like the Hall effect sticks on a regular controller. So you can pay for a nice looking controller, or you can pay for a nice featured controller, or you can pay for a nice looking controller with features. You're not forced down this funnel of having to spend XYZ amount because you're forced to get aesthetics and performance. I'll be honest, in all of this, I'm just kind of upset at how much money I've wasted on other controllers that would just get stick drift after 6 months. After using this, it's hard to honestly think about going back to anything else when it comes to controllers. You guys know I'm a hybrid player for Apex, so I play controller, I play mouse and keyboard, depends on how I feel. It's like a total different game depending on the input you play. And I understand there's a lot of casual players that don't see the value in these things, but once again, you can just keep the stock controller base and just add the Hall effect sticks on there so that you don't have to go buy another $60 controller 8 months from now. I'm interested to hear in what controller you're currently using for Apex. Like I said, I've used a PS5 Edge, I've used a Scuff, I've used a GameNetics controller, and I've even used the overpowered A Fusion Pro 2 controller. All solid controllers, it's just the fact they all come to die the same way. Stage 4 stick drift every time. Let me know what controller you're currently using, and if you're using mouse and keyboard, what are your thoughts on controllers trying to bridge the gap in all the accessibility that they have? There's a discount link down below for you guys to buy one and get 5% off. Thank you all for watching. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. And until next time, we'll see you all later.